two aspects of learning, two methods, two pathways. Which in Torah, in Torah in general and in Yeshiva in particular, they must be combined. One without the other leads a person into a direction that is not entirely positive and not entirely desirable. The two inyanim, just to name them, one is called Kabbalah soil, which means, in very broad terms, to follow certain directives, to do things right at the right time, essentially to be within a discipline. The other is to develop one's insights, to develop one's understandings, to develop one's feelings, to bring out the human qualities that are inherent in every human being.
What's it called?
It's called Havana Vehasaga, understanding. Vehasaga, to understand and to know. In the world with which many of us are familiar, these two exist really independently. They're two separate paths. Say, for instance, if someone goes to the army and needs to be trained to be a soldier, the training consists in learning how to obey an order and to follow through on a certain action without asking any questions. How to do certain simple acts, but to do them exact and on cue. On cue means the moment. Essentially, what's called obedience. Obedience to the extreme. Obedience. Obedience means to accept somebody's directive and follow through, and to obey. Na'aseh v'nishma. A soldier who asks his sergeant, why are we going there? He's not a soldier. He cannot be trusted on the front, and he can bring his entire company in danger. This is an extreme description, but actually, in normal civil life, there is also that perspective. There is an accepted and a granted type of principle that everyone has to go through higher education. He has to go to college. He has to get a degree. He goes to college. He is totally disinterested in the subject he is studying. Not only he's disinterested, but in many cases he doesn't understand what it's about. But he learns the technique of going through the regimen, going through the practice. And how to answer multiple choice questions. And he gets his little degree. He comes out having gone through the regimen of schooling, but not really having absorbed anything, having learned anything. On the other side, there is the attitude, especially by the young, who say, and this is essentially, you may not be familiar with it, so this is before your time, but the youth revolution, which started in the 60s, essentially rebelled against this kind of process, this type of education, this type of social order. What they said was, I want to feel, I want to appreciate what I do. I don't want to be in any kind, I don't want to represent a certain attitude. I want to live it. As a result of that, they rejected completely any kind of order. And the first sign of quote-unquote freedom from regimen was letting their hair grow to their waist and walking around in torn pants, just to counter the social order where you have to be neatly dressed and neatly combed. As the years progressed, revolution was no longer necessary. There was no rebellion anymore because the social order has actually kind of crumbled and there was no social order left. And there was no particular philosophy, no particular attitude in society left to rebel against. And what happened was that the young people were left with an open desert, relying solely on their personal experience and their personal feelings to give them guidance. How do I feel? How do I understand it? If I feel good about it, then it's good. If I don't feel comfortable with it, then it's no good. We can clearly argue the merits of each one of these attitudes. On the other hand, we can also see the shortcomings in each one of these attitudes. Because on the one hand, a human being is not an animal that should be saddled in a straitjacket and follow a certain regimen. A human being has to be able to relate personally to his life. On the other hand, when left totally uncharted, when he walks, so to speak, in an unmapped ground, there is no right and no wrong, then he can never find himself. Then the world and life loses direction and ultimately loses meaning. There is there is in the army there's a certain exercise called walk in space, in the place, where you actually have all the actions of walking. You lift one foot and put the other foot down, up and down, but you actually don't walk any place. You just stand in one place. Walking in place or walking nowhere is identical. You're going nowhere. In Torah, in Yiddishkeit, as in all aspects that you find in the world, Torah incorporates all good qualities that you can identify in the world, and incorporates all good qualities to their precise and correct limit, and combines them in the most perfect possible way. So limiting our discussion to the process of learning, process of growing up, process of setting oneself a path in life, we have these two aspects which have to be employed in pursuing one's education, in pursuing one's growth, in pursuing one's direction in life. Under normal circumstances, here since we're talking about individuals who, generally speaking, came to Yiddishkeit at a more advanced stage, I don't mean old, but advanced, so to speak, in a mature age, didn't have a chance to go through the elementary stages of child development. But just because these were skipped, it doesn't mean that the quality that they provide cannot be satisfied, cannot be filled in a so to speak, in a bootstrap, in a quick manner, because we are, after all, wise and experienced people. What is the normal method of a child growing up? The halacha is, this is in the Rambam, everything is found in Torah. The Rambam says, how do you start teaching a child? Talking about a very young child. You have to take him to cheder. Cheder means, the word cheder means a room. And I'll elaborate on this in a minute. You have to take him to a cheder. You have to sit him down with other kids, with other children. And you have to tell him, if you know what I teach you today, you're going to get a candy. And the child sits down in this cheder. Bear with me, I'll explain all the aspects that I'm touching on. He sits down in this cheder together with other kids, and his Rebbe teaches him Aleph. This is an Aleph, and he explains to him the various lines that an Aleph consists of. Even to the extent that the Melandim in olden days were very experienced and very dedicated to the child's mind. They would describe every letter in the Aleph Beis in such a way that the child could relate to the form of the letter in his own experience. In olden days, when there was no running water in the faucet, so water was fetched from a well that stood in the middle of town. So people would come to this well with buckets, fill up water and bring it back home. These buckets used to hang on a stick, 2 buckets, and the stick would balance on the shoulder. That way you can bring 2 buckets in one shot. So the Melamed would explain to him that he should remember what an aleph is. An aleph is similar to the 2 buckets hanging on the stick. So the child kind of related to what he is learning. And then, when the child repeated the aleph and he knew, he was able to identify the aleph, he would get a candy. So what actually transpired here? The first thing is, a child's inclination is not to be in a cheder, not to be in a room. A child's inclination is to be in the open field, run around, play with the birds, chase the birds, chase the chickens. And here, the first thing is you have to take him into a cheder. Why can't you stop him in the middle of chasing the chickens and tell him, if you learn this aleph, I'm going to give you a candy? Why take him into the room, into a cheder? Taking him into the cheder before teaching him the aleph impresses on the child that there are 2 separate periods, times. There's a time that you are playing and time that you are learning. What is the time that you are learning? What does it mean that you are learning? That you're learning means that you're doing something intentionally, intent, planned to acquire some knowledge. It isn't just spontaneous. Oh, I see a bird over here, let me chase this bird. Oh, I see this interesting rock, let me examine it. No, you don't see anything. You are in a context, you're in a room, and all you see is your Rebbe and the book in front of you. For a limited period of time, obviously, but it's separated from the playtime. You don't learn and play at the same time. So the child knows that learning is an activity, is a serious activity that requires attention and preoccupation. You have to forget about the playing for the moment. Another thing, he sits him down next to other children so that the child knows that when you play your own way. You like to play with the other kid? Fine. If you don't like, you play on your own. When it comes to serious activity, then you have to be able to share with others. You have to be able to discuss with others. You have to be able to compare notes. You have to be in line. You have to be in regimen. This is literally elementary. But this elementary step enables him to relate to acquisition of knowledge from both perspectives. On the one hand, there is the regimen. On the other hand, there is knowledge acquired. I'm learning something specific that I was asked to learn. Not that I'm choosing to learn, but I was told to learn. If I would learn something else but the aleph, I wouldn't get that candy. I would get the candy only if I learned that aleph. But this picture looks more interesting. No candy for the picture. So that learning It's very simple, but I would like you to follow this. Learning has a perfect combination of two inyanim, of two aspects. There is knowledge, there's understanding, and as I explained before, that actually the Rebbe would elaborate even on the form of an aleph. He would elaborate on it. He would explain to him what it looks like, how it's designed. And the child actually relates to it and understands it. But on the other hand, there is a regimen involved. Because this knowing of the aleph is called a real knowing, not play knowing. Not knowing that which I am inclined to know, but knowing that which I have to know, that which is meaningful to know. As time goes on and the child grows further, in the same vein, in the same direction, in the same manner, he is developed. Of course, the candy is replaced by, as the Rambam says, the candy is replaced by money, and then afterwards the candy is replaced, the money is replaced with recognition and put up on the stage, until the child grows to the point where he no longer needs any kind of immediate reward for his learning, because he truly appreciates the learning itself. But even after he reaches the point that he truly appreciates the learning itself, along with that comes his appreciation and recognition of the absolute necessity of learning in context, learning in one place, learning with others, learning in a planned manner, not learning haphazardly, what I prefer now. And at the same time, learning and understanding and absorbing it and going deeper and deeper into it. What am I absorbing? What am I learning? Not that which I choose, that which attracts my attention, but that which I'm supposed to learn. We have to translate this process. We have to kind of jumpstart. Jumpstart means quick jump over across the big ocean that separates us from childhood growth. But we have to nevertheless acquire the qualities that are inherent, that are contained in this process. We can easily be swayed by one or the other extremes that we were previously exposed to. We can be swayed by the idea that, step back a second. Actually, it would depend on where we're coming from, what our previous experience is. If we come from a background of complete free-for-all, without any regimen, I do what I please and when I please, then when one realizes that he has to contain himself and bring himself into a yeshiva, he turns around and says, hey, this is wrong. What is right? Regimen. I have to put myself in line and get hold of myself and do exactly what is right. And not pay attention to whether I like it or not, whether I understand it or not, whether I appreciate it or not. Do what is right. A reaction to one's prior state of mind. And considered to be a correction to the errors of the past. Similarly, if one was in an extreme regimen before, and he felt that in the world he was told to do the right just because it's socially unacceptable, and you have to present yourself correctly, and he lost a sense of it. He doesn't want just to do things because my neighbor wants me to do it. So then he turns around and says, I'm looking for something meaningful. I want to really be able to relate to something. I want to understand it. I want to see what's really behind it all. So then he tends to kind of turn away from regimen, turn away from form, and is attracted more just to the insights and understandings that he can absorb. Either one of these is a reaction to prior errors. But we cannot set our lives, we cannot set our so to speak, our wholesome path in life on the basis of reaction to prior errors. We have to recognize the error. But then when we want to correct it, we have to correct it correctly in a way that it gives us a wholesome life, which combines all the positive qualities in all the various paths and all the various manners and ways. Because either one of the others in reaction to anything does not lead to wholesome and complete development. We have to understand that here, this is, so to speak, the final step. Once a person comes here at this stage of life, no matter what his past experience was, this is where he absorbs, he sets his life pattern for his future. We're talking about adults, we're not talking about children. And if one has only one of these two aspects, appreciates only one of these two aspects of behavior and of pursuit and of learning, this will reflect itself in every aspect of his life, in every aspect of his activities. In life, in real life, without going into long deliberations and long descriptions, but everyone here understands very clearly that in life you have to be able to follow regimen, you have to be able to do the right thing at the right time, you have to be able to get up on time to go to work, you can't come late to work, you cannot say, I'm going to do the job regardless, what's the difference, I'll do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. No, if you're working, you have to be there when everybody else is there. On the other hand, in your relationships in life, you have to be able to relate on a human level. You can't just do the right thing. You have to be able to understand other people. You have to be able to relate intellectually and emotionally and personally to other people and to living aspects of life. There cannot be one or the other. The basic reason for that, for both, for the basic reason for the fact that there are these two opposite aspects in life. And the basic reason why these two aspects must be combined is the fact that we consist of two parts. We have a body and we have a soul. We have a neshama and we have a guf. In order that the guf, that the body, should appear to act normally, it has to be regimented. When the person is running back and forth, then you could see he's a lost soul. The neshama, on the other hand, the neshama wants to go deeper and deeper into the concept. He wants to understand and to relate to it. The neshama doesn't know boundaries, doesn't know worldly maps. I'll give you an illustration of the concept. If you have to go from Seagate to Brooklyn, or Brooklyn is right there, from Seagate to Crown Heights, if you just conceptualize the idea, I have to go from Seagate to Crown Heights, you think of it in terms of air miles. You know what air miles mean? It means directly. Assuming that you have a very tall pole, you climb up the pole and you look and say, oh, I see 770. That's what I want to go. As a matter of fact, this is how a person thinks. You don't think in terms of, okay, I have to go right, I have to go left, and I have to go straight, and I have to go another left. He doesn't think in those terms. He thinks in terms, where am I going? And in one sentence, he says where he's going. He cannot be, in his thought, he doesn't get regimented according to the map and according to the limits of travel. On the other hand, if he starts moving his body there, not his thought, but actually going there, he better be regimented. Otherwise he's going to hit every house on the road. He's never going to get there. Our task is to bring together the neshama with the guf. Our task is not to have the guf do the right thing, nor is our task to have the neshama ideas. It is the real big challenge in life is combining and bringing unity between these two parts of what we are made up of. We know you've learned in Chassidus and you learn the mitzvah more and you understand it more, that Hashem, that God is all over. Not only is He all over, but really, as Chassidus explains, there is only God. That's the only truth there is. Yet, as we're learning in Chumash these days, Hashem said that how can we facilitate that my presence, Hashem says, how can my presence be amongst you is if you build a house, a little tabernacle, a little house that is dedicated to my presence. What does that mean? Why do we need a tabernacle to express Hashem's presence in the world? Hashem is all over. What's the answer? The answer is that Hashem is all over. But who knows that? The neshama. In order that the goof should also be aware of it. In order that we should practically in this world, in the limits of the world, be aware of it, we need to build a tabernacle. We need to bring it and express it in a worldly, finite, limited form. That's when we say that within the world, God is present. Similarly, we say we daven every day, and then we learn Torah every day, and we do mitzvahs every day, and we go to work every day. Each one of these things are right and just and correct activities in and of themselves. So when do I stop davening and go to learn? When do I stop learning and go to work? There's an interesting halacha. There's a halacha that says, you know that we have a mitzvah in Eretz Yisrael that when your field produces produce, wheat, barley, whatever it is, you have to give truma. You have to give a certain amount to the kohen, and that becomes holy. That becomes kodesh. The kohen has to eat it in tahara. He has to go to mikveh, and so forth. There's a whole halachas with this. And without taking off this little bit and giving to the kohen, you're not allowed to eat your produce. Otherwise, you have to take it off and give it. So somebody feels very generous. Somebody feels very generous, and he says, "Oh, give to God. I want to give the whole thing to God. My field produced 100 bushels. I want to give them all to Hashem. I appreciate so much God's presence and the blessing that He has given. I want to give the whole thing to Him." Beautiful, right? What's the din? Nothing happened. It doesn't become Kodesh. It doesn't become Truma. You take 2%, that's basically, there isn't even a limit, there isn't even a measure, a required measurement, but the Chachomim, the sages, have established it at 2%. You give 2% from it, it becomes Kodesh. And you can eat the rest of it. You give the whole thing, nothing happened, you're still not allowed to eat it, and it doesn't become Kodesh. How do we understand it? So this question was once asked of the Maral Miprog. You heard the Maral Miprog? Some heard, some didn't. Maral Miprog was a very great Rav, approximately 500 years ago, maybe thereabout. He was actually the ancestor of our Rebbes. The Alter Rebbe, they're in his lineage, or his descendants. So this question was placed to the Maral Miprog. Was put in front of the Maral Miprog as a challenge. Actually, he was called to a debate with Galachim, with priests, with the Catholics, and this is the one challenge that they put to him: what sense does your Torah have if they have this kind of a law? So the Maral explained. He says, with the following parable, he says, imagine the king gives you a gift. and you appreciate that grace from the king. You appreciate the gift, you appreciate his grace to you, and you want to show an appreciation, you want to show how you appreciate the king. So you take the gift that he gave you, give it right back to him and say, Your Majesty, I appreciate your kindness, and here it is to show that I appreciate it. Is that a message of appreciation? That's throwing it right back to him. It shows, on the contrary, you're not appreciating it at all. The king gave you the gift because he wants you to have it, because he wants you to use it for good things. You give it right back to him. It means that you don't want to use it for the purpose for which he gave it to you. You give it right back to him. All you're interested in is that he should appreciate you. Translating it in our practical day, Hashem has given us a bright, beautiful day. And in this day, we have many things that we have to do. Amongst them, we have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to take care of our health, and we have to do mitzvahs, and we have to daven and learn. Each thing has its right time. Only then do we really express our appreciation that Hashem has given it to us. By saying, I'm going to be davening a whole day, I'm going to be learning a whole day, or I'm going to put on tefillin a whole day. All of these things are holy and beautiful things. But it's taking things completely out of context, taking things completely out of their purpose and their meaning. Which means, bring that back to the crux and to the point of the discussion. We have to pursue both aspects. We have to be regimented. We have to know that things have to be done the right time. If we have to learn Chassidus, we have to learn Chassidus in the right time and in the right place. We can't say learning Chassidus is a good thing. I'm going to learn it at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's not what learning Chassidus in this world means. That's for the neshama, it's okay, but not the neshama in the guf. We have to daven in the right time. We have to learn in the right time, and so forth. And not only, okay, that's on one hand. On the other hand, when we learn Chassidus, during this hour that we have, it is not enough to say, I learned Chassidus an hour. So I did my great thing, I learned Chassidus. What did you learn? What did you understand? How did it touch you? What does it mean to you? This is the other aspect of it. That hour has to be spent with personally relating to it, personally understanding it. And on the other hand, even though I got so involved and I'm so imbued, so to speak, so interested, so touched by what I'm learning, when the time comes to close the book and go to the next thing, I have to close the book and go to the next thing. Because our purpose as Jews, our purpose in life is not to do that which I like, but to do that which Hashem wants us to do. Hashem wants us to do the right thing at the right time with our fullest participation. That we should actually participate and understand and enjoy it. But not just for the purpose of enjoying it, but for the purpose of being with it and being part of this great gift that Hashem has given us. Only with this perfect combination that only the Torah is capable of directing us in how to combine these two very divergent paths and attitudes. Only this way do we actually find, after a relatively short period of time, how not only our minds have grown and our hearts have grown, but our whole personality, our whole person, our whole perception of life and world has changed, becomes real. There is a day, there's a night, there's a week, there's a month, there's a year. Everything in the world is real. It's not just a cycle, an endless, one day chasing the other without any particular order and any particular meaning. Everything has its proper time. This is why, right in the beginning of the creation, right in the beginning of the Torah, and the first principle of Yiddishkeit is that there are 6 days and there is a 7th day. There are 7 days in the week. There's a week. What's the difference between one day and the other? Where do you see the demarcation line of 7 days? It's totally unnoticed in the wild scheme of things. But the Torah tells us no. There is a cycle of 7, and after each cycle of 7, there's a new cycle of 7. It's a new thing. And each cycle of 7, Sunday through Shabbos, has to have accomplished a complete thing. What have I done? Where have I come to this week? And then there is a cycle of a month, roughly 30 days. Then there's a yearly cycle. Everything has its own unit. And then the Torah expands upon it, and just briefly, there is a cycle of what's called a week of years, which is 7 years. And then there is a week of Shemitahs, a week of 7 years, which is 49 years. It's another cycle. And a Jubilee year, the 50th year is a Jubilee year. Everything in Torah, the most superficial or the most profound, is expressed at some level it's expressed in a precise, descriptive manner in worldly context. Huh?
In the world of what?
In a worldly context. This, in fact, is why some people find it difficult. Some people have there's even a saying, from outside looking into Yiddishkeit, they say, "Oh, it's a dry way to live. You just have to do the right thing. You're not. There's no aesthetics. There's no. Where's the human quality?" Because you see things superficially, you're not really going into the heart of it. The heart of Yiddishkeit and the mind of Yiddishkeit and the soul of Yiddishkeit is all there. But it has to be contained within a body. It has to be contained within a structure. Then it is for real. Then it is not just my momentary experience. And tomorrow I'm going to have a different momentary experience. It's a real thing. And this is how it grows, and grows indefinitely. This is how, in short, by learning Torah, we're not just learning about Torah, we're not just learning knowledge, but actually, just as if you water a tree, the tree produces fruit and grows, the Torah is like water to our souls, water to our bodies. We learn in Torah, and we begin to flower. We begin to produce fruit. We begin to flourish. It doesn't just provide us with knowledge. Torah is really the food and drink of the soul, so that we actually grow into fruit-producing trees. This is the message for today.